we all have different motherhood journeys, different paths that got us to being mom. And one of those paths for me was having my second baby, which ended up being a transverse lie pregnancy. And when I was in this state of having a transverse lie, I had such a hard time finding support and answers, direction on what to expect and who I could talk to about it. So I want to take the time to talk a little bit about my birthing experiences. I've had 3, but specifically the transverse lie.
Hey mama, are you struggling with how to make time for yourself as a work-at-home mom? Are you drowning in laundry and dishes, poopy diapers, and kids who are constantly screaming, Mom, even though they're 5 feet away from you? I get it. I'm Jessa, and this is Caught Up in Motherhood, where I want to help you set priorities, create boundaries, ask for help, and create some time management systems in your life so you can put your self-care first. You can show up for you without sacrificing motherhood and without the guilt. So if you're ready to be caught up in motherhood, then go grab that fresh cup of coffee and that laundry basket sitting in the corner. Don't worry, I've got mine too. And listen in to today's episode.
Okay, so I'm a mom of 3, and my second baby was a transverse lie baby. Okay, my first was your traditional birth baby. My second and my third were both C-section. All right, so first was vaginal, other 2 were cesarean. And I have learned so much with each pregnancy, with each birthing experience, and I want to share a couple of things about those that I've learned. And this is meant for, those new mamas that are maybe pregnant, or if you're really curious about the transverse lie birthing experience at all and just want a little bit more information. Now, I am not a doctor. I'm not in the medical field in any way. I'm just a mom, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experiences and the things that I've learned through my birthing experiences. And this is going to be a little off topic in a way because I don't talk too much about birthing on the podcast, but I feel like it's important. And as someone who had a transverse lie, I had a hard time myself finding resources that helped me through this process a little bit, and the fears and the doubts and the what ifs of being in the moment of it. So I'm wanting to do this for the future me's out there that are going to have a similar situation. So a transverse lie, just to get you started, is where the baby is literally lying sideways in your womb. So their back, traditionally, maybe their shoulder blade, but somewhere along their back is facing down for the birth canal. So they cannot be born vaginally when they're in that position. So traditionally, like their head, maybe for me at least, the head was under the left rib cage, and then like the butt was on the right side, and then the feet, on the right side, kicking everything over there. So lying literally sideways in your belly, and your belly looks a little weird because you're not that traditional like round basketball. You're more like an oval because of how they're lying. And when they're in that position, they have to be turned to be born vaginally, or you have to have a C-section. And what they don't tell you with this whole birthing experience and with carrying your baby like this is the amount of pressure and strain it can put on the body. And for me, this pregnancy, my second son, he was your traditional lie up until about 25, 26 weeks pregnant. Okay. He was doing great. Everything was great. We didn't have any issues really throughout the pregnancy. We had a low placenta liquid scare at the 20-week ultrasound, did some additional testing, and everything was fine. It was just a bad day kind of thing, because it was fine with every other test that we did, and they weren't concerned about it anymore. But it was because of that we had another ultrasound around the 26, 28 week mark and learned that he was sideways and he had turned transverse. And looking back on my pregnancy journey, I can tell you for a fact when he turned sideways, or at least when he tried to turn to go face down and couldn't do it. We were at a fair park grounds, like a permanent amusement park fair place, and lots of walking. I did not go on any of the rides, but lots of walking. Warm summer day, and I don't know if it was the combination of the fact that I had slept on an air mattress the night before, maybe a little dehydrated, I don't know, but it was like the perfect storm where I was about that 26 week mark and I was having contractions. Okay. And they were a little scary because they were measurable, and I was kind of freaking out a little bit, but trying not to let my husband know that I was freaking out because the kids were having so much fun and I didn't want to spoil the fun, and it's too early. So I'm telling myself that this is all mental. Like, I'm just doing this to myself. I need to calm down, drink some water, sit down. Okay. I get through the day and everything's fine. I go to my next doctor's appointment because it all passed, right? It was too active, too much sun, not enough water, too much walking, not enough sitting. Perfect storm. But I could feel like him moving around a lot. And like it just felt like he couldn't turn, like he was stuck somehow. And maybe if I had gone in, maybe I would have saw that he was transverse at that point, or maybe I would have saw him trying to turn from the transverse position. I don't know. But it all passed. Everything calmed down. I was fine a couple hours later. And then we go into the doctor, I think around that 28 week mark, have another ultrasound done just to check on things. And now he's sideways. He's transverse. And we start having that conversation of what that means and what that entails. And traditionally, you can turn your baby when they are transverse lie. But you don't turn your baby until you're ready to have the baby. Because don't watch the videos. They can be a little scary. And if you're a little sensitive stomach, you don't want to do it. Seriously. But the doctors, because traditionally will take 2, use their hands and will literally turn the baby in your stomach. And when they do this, you're hooked up to monitors. They can give you some medication to help with the pain because it's going to hurt to turn. But when they do this, you need to be ready to have that baby because the stress that it puts on your body and the stress that it puts on your baby's body, the chances of you going into labor are very high. The chances of there being complications are very high. And for me, I had a midwife, which we then got a doctor involved to have that second opinion. And when we were looking at how my son was laying, we also had to look at the placenta location. And I had a placenta that was on the bottom, so by the birthing canal, and just slightly off to the side. And with the location of the placenta and the cord, and everything going on, it's the perfect storm, the doctor had suggested not trying to turn him. He was worried about the placenta and having it rip, placenta abrasion, I think that's the term, having it rip off the side of the wall and having that issue. He was worried about the cord and the cord's location in relation to his head because he was using it as a pillow in essence. So there was a lot of these other factors that were there. And then I have a smaller frame. I'm 5'3". And I'm just a little bit petite that way. And he was just concerned about my frame, being able to withhold it. And I am personally a strong believer that things are meant to be. And trusting that things are supposed to be a certain way. And I can tell you that there were a handful of times in that last month that he tried to turn. He really, really tried. The full belly moving, like just big kicks, big head movements going on, like stopped everything I'm doing. I'm in so much pain because he's trying to move and he couldn't. And to me, that was a sign that there was something wrong in the fact that he could not get head down. Whether it was the placenta was in the way or there was something else going on internally that I'm to this day not aware of yet, but that there was something preventing him from being able to engage and to turn how he needed to turn. And at that point, I had to accept the fact that I needed a C-section because the risks of turning, for me personally, were too high. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of trauma from what I've been told and watching the videos. Like, oh, yeah, you gotta be a strong person to go through a turning experience. And my breech mamas, they know what I'm talking about because I'm told it's similar. And again, I have not done any type of baby turning that way. I did try some of the baby turning at home that you can do, those baby turning techniques at home. They didn't work. A lot of times those were the times where he would try to turn and couldn't. It would be like during those events. And I just stopped trying at that point because he couldn't do it. It was too much pain. It was too much. So it ends up being that it's going to be a C-section. So it was a scheduled C-section because he was not turning. And I made the doctor check even the day of to make sure that he was still transverse. Because if he wasn't transverse, then I wanted to try to have a vaginal birth if I could. But lo and behold, transverse up until the very last second, coming out and everything. So that is ended up how I got my first C-section. Now, for me, personally, carrying him in that transverse position was hard on my hips, hard on my pelvic floor. And I was so grateful for the fact that I was already in pelvic floor therapy. And it really helped me get through the pregnancy with minimal pain, or at least manageable pain throughout the pregnancy. And then that same pelvic floor therapy really, really helped after for recovery from having a C-section. And I'm a huge advocate for pelvic floor therapy for women, men, whoever, just in general. It's a huge necessary thing that insurance companies don't like to cover, which is such a shame. But especially after birth, everyone who has a baby, I don't care how you have that baby, should have pelvic floor therapy. And it can just do wonders for your body. I mean, think about it. It takes 9 months to make that baby. And then in 6 to 8 weeks, you're expected to be your normal self again, right? Your organs are still moving. Things are still healing. So seeing someone who specializes in helping your body heal, oh, life-changing, I'm telling you. And with the pelvic floor therapy and the C-section, specifically that C-section, I had to prepare myself for that mentally and emotionally. And for me, that was really hard. I had these underlying issues with the C-section that I didn't want it. I wanted the vaginal birth, and I felt like I was taking an easy way out. And that is so wrong to think. Like, now that I've experienced it and I've been through it, like, it is not an easy way out. It, by any means. You're literally being cut in half to have your baby. But this just speaks to like my background and my mental state in relation to it was I was cheating. I was missing out on something if I did if I did a C-section. And that's not true. It is so not true. I love that baby just as much as his older brother and his little sister, and she was a C-section as well. And for me, because of my upbringing and the women in my family, I felt I had to have that vaginal birth. So to help me get over that hump of accepting the C-section, I saw a therapist to help me just with that acceptance piece, because it was so hard for me to move forward with. I knew it was necessary. I knew we should do it. And that was the safety of the baby, the safety of me. But for some reason, I still had it in my head that I was being selfish and that he was going to miss out on this, grand birth experience. Like, I can't even tell you exactly what my thoughts were anymore, because I know that they weren't right. They weren't healthy thoughts. And I am so grateful for the family and friends that I had that helped me over this unrealistic hump that I had to get over to accept the C-section. Because that second C-section was a great experience. I had an amazing doctor, and he did such a great job, and he really took his time to sew everything up nicely and explain things as he was doing them and walking me through the whole process. He was great. And it's really hard to think about at times, but I am so grateful for that C-section delivery and how good that was, that when I think about my firstborn, which was a vaginal, I think about that experience. That one was traumatic. That experience was absolutely terrible for me, and made me scared, actually, to have a vaginal birth. Like, I was not going back to that hospital. I was not seeing those doctors again. I was not going to that location ever again, because I was so traumatized by my experience and scared to go back there. That having this extremely positive and some amazing staff that I got to be under the care of for my second was life-changing. And that really, really helped me with the transverse and the C-section piece. And my third was also a C-section. Now, she was breached, and I got pregnant really quickly after having my second, and they tell you that you should give your body at least a year to heal if you can between pregnancies, especially C-sections, just to give you your body that extra time to heal. And I didn't. Oops. And we had our third, and I had a lot of pelvic pain again, like walking, standing, just moving. So physical therapy, pelvic therapy was absolutely life-changing. And with my third, like I said, she was a C-section as well, and that experience was mixed. My doctor for my second one retired, which I was so sad about, and I had a different doctor. Now, she was still a great doctor, don't get me wrong, and the experience was still good. My body did not respond well the third time around, and I had some issues in delivery. Nothing that was caused or really to do with the doctors. Like, they handled everything, I think, as well as you could expect them to. But it was my body did not do well through delivery the third time around. My whole point with all of this is I just wanted to talk a little bit on that transverse lie. And I know that this is a very specific episode for a specific subset of people, and that's why I'm doing it now and doing it like this. I want to get this out there a little bit and just talk about it. And for any mamas to be, or mamas in general, I just want to remind you of a couple of key things that I learned through my 3 birthing experiences that I just want all mamas to know so that they can really have their best birthing experience possible. And the first is you can fire your nurse. You can fire your doctor. Okay? If you are uncomfortable and that doctor or that nurse is making you uncomfortable, or they're doing something that you don't agree with, they're not abiding by your wishes or even acknowledging your wishes. Like my first birthing experience, I went in with my birthing plan, but I called it preferences because I understood that I'm not going to get everything that I want, and that the birthing experience isn't going to be this, beautiful flowers flying from the sky birthing experience kind of thing. All right, things are going to happen, and there's things are going to happen that are out of my control. So I called them birthing preferences. They were things that I would prefer to happen if safe for it to happen. Okay? Like skin to skin right after, right? I wanted to have skin to skin immediately after. I wanted delayed cord clamping. But if it was unsafe to do those things, I understood we're not going to do them. But I got so many eye rolls when I gave out my preference list. The doctor that was on call, because I did not have my doctor, and the nursing staff, just rolling their eyes at me like I was being ridiculous. And I don't know if it was because of the actual preference list or being the first time mom. I don't know. But you can fire your nurse, you can fire your doctor, and trust your gut. That's number 2. Trust your gut. Okay? There have been moments in my birthing, all 3 birthing experiences, where my gut, my head, whatever, God told me something was wrong. And I either didn't listen or I listened too late. And then there were complications, and then there were issues, right? So trust your gut. And that goes for all of motherhood, not just your birthing experience, but everything. Like, trust your intuition, right? We have it for a reason. Trust it. And then ask for help. That is so big. Ask for help. And it's the simplest things of, carrying the laundry up the stairs to mental health, right? I had this mental block about C-sections that I needed to get over, and I had to get that help to get over it because I had this unhealthy block for me about it. Now, I had no problem with C-sections. I have had friends and family that have done C-sections, and that's great. That's fine. And I'm so grateful that they did the C-section because that means that they're still here and their babies are here and they're healthy. But for some reason, that mental block only applied to me. For some reason, I was the only one that wasn't allowed to have one, right? I've learned that that's something that I have done for myself in a lot of ways. Where maybe you can relate. You hold yourself to a different standard than you hold everybody else. Not necessarily a higher standard, a different standard. It is okay for everyone else to experience their emotions. It is okay for everyone else to have a C-section. It is okay for everyone else to go on that date or to go watch that movie or to do that thing or whatever it is. That's okay. They can do it, but I can't. For whatever reason, I can't. So it's getting past that block that I had to do. But asking for help with your mental health during pregnancy and after pregnancy is so important. Even when you don't think that you necessarily need it or you think you're doing okay, it's always good just to have that check-in with someone and to talk about the experience and just get it out. Because things happen so fast, endorphins, adrenaline, everything is just going. And you need to be able to process. And you can't always process in the moment. And same thing for your spouse. Like, you guys need to talk about it. Because he saw some things and experienced some things that he's not used to or that he's never experienced before either. I mean, my husband's been with me through all 3 now, and each one's been different. And each one he is learn or had to experience something completely different. And we have both needed to like decompress after each birth, whether that is positive or negative. You just need to decompress that energy from the experience so that you can move on from it, whatever that might look like, positive or negative. Because if we can't process these big moments in our life, then they become a negative baggage in a lot of ways. And then it can turn into like spite and anger and frustration, and all of a sudden you're bitter and you don't know why, and then you have to go back to that location or that hospital or you see that doctor and you're just bitter and you don't understand why you're so angry. And then you realize that you never got to fully heal from that experience. You never talked to someone about your experience, about what it felt like, what you went through, the moments you don't remember. Like having my third, I had a failed spinal. So they had to knock me out in a hurry, because all of a sudden I'm yelling at them, I can feel it, don't do that, stop right now, I can feel you cutting. And then they had to knock me out, and I don't remember, all right, because I was knocked out the rest of the birthing experience. And I had to work through that and accept the fact that in my mind, I wasn't present for the birth of my daughter because I was unconscious. And that was so hard for me because I wasn't the first one to hold her. I didn't get to have that skin to skin with her. I didn't get to have that bonding with her immediately after she was born because I was unconscious and they had to wake me up. And that was so hard. But I got to take that moment and turn it for the positive, and the fact that my husband got that. He got to have that first skin to skin, and he got to hold her when she was first born and connect with her in a way that I couldn't. And I'm so grateful for that. But it's getting through those moments of your birth story, your delivery stories, and acknowledging and accepting the positives and the negatives, and knowing that it's okay. Knowing that we're all human, no matter how we're born. And our mamas love us, no matter how we're born. We're just grateful that we're all here and that we get to hold them. Because in the end of the day, it really doesn't too much matter how they got here. It's the fact that they're here. And we get to hold them and cuddle them. So with that, mama, don't forget that you got this. And I'm going to go and get me some baby cuddles because I think I need it now after this.
Hey mama, thanks for hanging out with me today. I know you have a lot going on, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope this episode gave you new energy to tackle the day. If so, can you leave a review and subscribe to Caught Up in Motherhood on Apple Podcasts? That would mean the world to me. I'd also love to hear from you on Instagram. So screenshot this episode and share it to your stories. And don't forget to tag me at _Jessa Ray. And remember, mama, you got this. Until next time, I'm Jessa, and this is Caught Up in Motherhood.